name is Isabella Johnston, and I am the Intern Whisperer and the founder of Employers for Change. Today's tip of the week is about the development of data analysis. We all recognize how the demand for data has been driving our choices. This impacts every single industry that we are active in. As the world continues to generate more data, it becomes customized and rich. So by 2030, practically all of us will be expected to understand how data affects our roles and responsibilities, as well as where to find the information we need and what tools we can use to analyze it. We will be expected to understand the rules and regulations that need to be followed to work with data fairly and ethically. Learning how to use the flow of information to do our jobs more efficiently and effectively will be high on the list of skills that employers look for in 2030. You might want to explore or brush up on data analytics using this course that's offered for free by Career Foundry. It is called a Data Analytics Short Course. It is ideal if you want a light touch-up introduction to data analytics, or you can sign up and you'll get access to 5 hands-on 15-minute lessons by Dr. Humaira Noor, an accomplished data pro. The course provides a broad view of data analytics, setting you up to explore the topic further if you choose. Be sure to go and look for this in our show notes that you will find in the show description. Today, we're going to be welcoming our guest, Jacques Fu. So today's guest is somebody I'm super excited to have on the show. I've been looking forward to this for a while. It's Jacques Fu. He's the CEO of Sincerely. He's the co-founder of a unicorn $1 billion fintech company known as Stacks, co-founder of a whole lot of things, an author of Time Hacks, tech entrepreneur, angel investor, and keynote speaker. Welcome to the show, Jacques.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
So we kick off our show usually by asking the guest to tell us only 5 words that describe you, and then why those 5 words. Then we talk about your career journey. So what are your 5 words?
In sentence format or making a list?
Oh, you can make the list first.
Okay. So 5 words. So I would say excited, nervous, curious, supportive, and let's see.
I'm going to give you curious because I know
yeah.
that's one of your words that I would use to describe you for sure.
I'm going to give you an energized. So they'll have 5. Excited, nervous, curious, supportive, and energized.
Okay. So why excited?
Well, I'm starting on this new journey to build a startup again. So I'm really looking forward to see maybe some things I can do the same and see if they're going to give me the same result. Maybe some things I'll tweak and see if they're going to be better. But I guess that's more curious than excited. But the exciting part is just seeing what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess that goes hand in hand with nervous, unless there's something else that's going on.
No, that's basically it, right? Like I can be proven wrong, and I am mostly excited to, no matter what happens, to whether it's what I expect or not what I expect. I can be pleasantly surprised as well, but there's always a little bit of self-doubt when you start on something new.
Yeah, definitely. It's always one of those things. It sounds like you're preparing for the best, but also the worst.
Yeah.
So whatever happens in between is good.
That's right. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So supportive.
Well, it's really interesting because now I've always been a CTO, always been the co-founder with other people for the most part. And I've always had this personality of wanting to be in that support role, right? So whether it was in the community or in my startups or as part of the family, I see my success in being able to lift up others. So it'd be really interesting as a CEO. I mean, CEO should be supportive, right? If they're doing a good job. It's just maybe a different role than I'm used to.
Yeah, definitely. And being supportive, sometimes I think it's a challenge to even remember to do that to yourself. I don't know what you think about that, but you have to remember.
Oh, that's very fair. Yeah, for sure.
No, always got to lift yourself up and go, okay, if nobody else is telling me this, I need to make sure I'm staying in a positive mindset, right? Mm.
100%.
So the other word was energized.
Yeah, I mean, I am a creator. I like building things. And oftentimes when you build something to a certain scale, you're often, trying to make a high velocity of decisions, but you're going to be encumbered by the complexity of your organization, the number of, things that have to happen to move, a really big ship, right? And so for me, I get energy from building and creating. And even though the decisions that I make have a huge impact, I'm a little bit a little bit more removed, right, from the end result. And so I just get energized when I can get my hands on the thing. I can be on, the floor, so to speak, with everyone else, really trying to, carve that path out.
Mm. Well said. All right. So how did you get started in your career path? Did you go the traditional route of, going to college, or what was your journey like to where you are now? You can meander around as much as you want.
Yeah. I mean, I did go to college, but I did not finish. So, and funny thing, earlier this year, I got an award from UCF, and they had a kind of like a list of things, and they couldn't put a number next to my name. So it was really interesting when they did the graphics for that event. But I'm really proud of going to college. I think it was a great experience. I met a lot of people. I learned a lot about myself. But ultimately, I think, I was already, working, in throughout college and prior. I had taught myself to code. So I'd even switched majors because the type of, computer science and engineering that they teach in college isn't necessarily exactly aligned with, at least at the time, was not aligned with what skills you needed in the actual workforce to create business applications, to create software. And so I really saw college as a way to network, as a way to like expose myself to topics and to subject matter experts that I normally wouldn't have. And I got really really busy with the business and other ventures that I had, and so I had to drop out. But I don't consider it a failure. I just, I got what I needed out of it. So,
Yeah, I would agree with you. I also think that college isn't necessarily needed for everyone, and especially in some career paths. Computer science is the example. I don't think you have to go to college for that. I think you can absolutely be a self-learner on that end of it and accomplish quite a bit at probably a faster pace than what you would experience in going to school.
yeah, look, I mean, there are certain things, I would say, very specific things that you probably do need to go to school for. We all know what those things are, right? Like if you want to be a doctor, you
Right.
should probably go to med school.
Hmm.
If you want to practice law, you should probably go to law school, right? There are certain things that our regulatory environment requires, as well as we would like people to be at a certain, like almost a minimum guaranteed level of competence in certain things. But
Right.
other things can't be measured in the same way. And I would say that's most things probably don't require a college education, but I would still probably say most people would benefit from the experience.
I agree with you. I think if anybody needs a license or a certificate, like, people in the nursing field, not just doctors, but anybody in the medical industry has to have a license or a certificate. Yes, they should. Insurance people, maybe, maybe not, but they still get certified to a certain extent. Financial planners, people that are dealing with money is another example, right? And even people that, are people that work in the automotive industry. To a certain extent, they have to have certificates, but it's very specialized. It's more of going to, I guess we'll call it blue collar. I don't know if they still call it that, but it's used to be called that. Anything that's a hands-on experience for sure. I appreciate you sharing that and also pointing that out. Many times people don't think about that, but what we get from going to college is usually that well-rounded experience. Like you were saying, you were seeing it as a way to network.
Yeah, network. I got to, I started a lot of things. I started the Mixed Martial Arts Club at UCF. I was vice president of the Sports Club Council. We had like $1 million budget to like figure out how to, distribute it to all the athletic clubs, and got to meet a lot of people. I was a founder of a Asian fraternity. I didn't finish the process. I had to drop out part of the way through, but I was one of the original founders of a fraternity. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience, and like I said, I wouldn't change anything about what happened. But yeah, I mean, people ask me, no, I don't have a college degree. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But my mother didn't either. And she was extremely well read, and she could hold her own against anybody in a room. And I know you can also. So
I
no
appreciate
worries
that.
in that area. Yeah. You're extremely on top of everything. So what was your first job then?
So, really it was the family business we were doing real estate, and I was trying to automate everything and scale the business. So I didn't realize it at the time, but I was kind of creating a precursor to all of these, cloud-based CRM, ERP systems. But basically anything and every process in the company, I was trying to figure out a way, like, how do we automate this so it doesn't require people a very minimal amount of time. And so with real estate, that was kind of a novel concept because everything was done with people back in that time. And I guess I'm dating myself, but like 2004, 2005, time frame was really when things got busy for me in that business. And it was I was driving down to all the counties and downloading their publicly available data sets and centralizing in a database. I was mining that, and then we were sifting through the leads using just algorithms that we had on where we felt we had the most success on getting a return on our investments, and that would automatically feed into a CRM where the salespeople would call against it. Then those leads would get converted into accounts. Once we closed those customers, we did mobile notaries. They have now remote ones that you can do digitally now over the computer. But back then, that was the closest thing I could get to automating that part of the process. So we did closing. We had in-house attorneys. I mean, everything, end to end to find properties that we wanted to invest in and close on them. We brought all those resources in house, and we automated everything in a single cloud based system, which was I didn't realize what I was building at the time, but it was incredibly valuable for me because I got to see I got to touch every aspect of the business operationally, from sales all the way to accounting, finance. And that was helpful for me as I continued my entrepreneurial journey. So it was really good.
So that's extremely valuable. The fact that you could automate so much was incredible, and create those workflows too. What would a major be that's similar to that, or what is the skill set that people should look for? Because I want that person. I'm trying to figure out
Yeah.
who that person is. Is that a software engineer? Is it somebody in data analysis? I have no idea.
That's a great question. A single major might be, I would say maybe the closest is, I think they still call it like MIS, Management Information Systems. Is that still a degree? So it's just sort of a blending of business technologies with information technology. And so prerequisites for that degree, I believe, include your basic accounting course, finance courses. You might take other business courses, but you're also taking IT administration courses. You probably these days there's some coding in there. So everything you need to sort of digest and understand what's happening at a business, and then the supplementary skills that you would need to automate or implement software and tools and technology to accelerate or improve those processes. So I would say, yeah, MIS is, if I had to pick one. Again, I don't even know if that degree is still a thing or
Yeah,
popular anymore, but that's
sure.
what I remember it being called.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to check into that and see if it is still out there. I think it is. I think I've seen it on some schools, but it's normally people are directed to go towards AI now. So I think that's really where the
Well,
direction.
and that's great that if you're going to be working in that field and advancing AI, then that's what you should do. But really, a lot of when it comes down to building great businesses, you're not really paving a new uncharted territory in your industry or your field, right? You're just doing practical things. And so having AI background is great, but if you don't understand accounting, if you don't understand how to do customer support, if you don't know how leads come into a business and how you acquire them and how you do product management or implement new features and functionality within software or do your infrastructure, if you don't know any of those things, then the AI is going to have, more limited effect across an entire business. So, me coming from a family of entrepreneurs, you sort of have to learn about everything. And so it was really hard for me to pick, a single major that encompassed that. I didn't go into MIS directly. I did computer science, and then I switched to accounting. And so sort of in essence, I sort of made my own version of that, if you will, a blending of business and software engineering. So.
Yeah, that was a smart move for you for sure. So let's talk about where you continued on past that. Let's talk about anything that was in between there, but you can jump to Stacks if you want.
Yeah, so I did try. I got better and better at building tech startups. I did a reg tech company. We did Sarbanes-Oxley compliance software. I didn't know anything about pricing, so I actually landed about 5 publicly traded companies as clients, but I wasn't really charging them enough for the software that I was offering. So I wound down that business, and I had a few different things. Did some consulting in the banking industry, and yeah, ultimately, I think the most success I had after that was at a co-founding company called SysRx. We built e-prescribing software. So that was a new challenge for me because, healthcare was a completely new space for me. I had to learn a lot of different, regulations and standards that were specific to that space. I had to become a subject matter expert, but kind of apply everything that I knew about business and technology. So that was a fun challenge. But, I was kind of young. I got bored, I guess, feeling like I was not being hands-on. And so when we reached about 100 employees, I wanted to see what else was out there, and I kind of wanted to start something new. I think in retrospect, I probably could have stayed longer. There was certainly more to learn, but I hadn't grown anything to that size, and so I didn't know what else was out there. I met Sal and Sanera, my best friends now, but at a tech accelerator, and we ended up merging our 2 startups, which at the time was called into Fat Merchant, and now it is known as Stacks. And so, we built that company up through kind of an 8-year journey, and is now the first unicorn out of Orlando, and the most recent as of this recording, I think.
That's very impressive too, because I know we all live in the startup community here, at least you and I do. And it's a big deal because Orlando doesn't always get the recognition it deserves for being a STEM and a STEAM hub, is what I'm going to call it, because we have a lot going on here. And I know you're involved with those things too. So if you want to segue to what you're doing now, that's pretty cool. So what is Sensely?
Oh yeah, so Sensely is a e-learning platform. We plan to build a lot of AI capabilities into it. But basically, the main premise is that, one of the things, and through all my backgrounds, you can tell, I have a passion for entrepreneurship. And so I have a soft spot as well for anyone who, wants to go down that path. And I often get a lot of questions like, well, how do I get started? Maybe someone just has a day job and they're like, well, I don't know. I don't have, necessarily the ability to raise capital, or I don't even have an idea sometimes. And so after, Stacks, we definitely work with a lot of entrepreneurs there. And I started to realize that, not everyone is going to go down specific types of entrepreneurial paths, right? They may have physical disabilities where they can't be, a plumber or a painter or something like that, right? Or maybe they're more creative than technically minded. So maybe they're not going to become an engineer and build apps and things like that, right? Like not everyone is necessarily suited for that. There's other very important and wonderful skills that people have, and they're not all necessarily commercially translatable either. But what I think is possible is that I think everyone can be an entrepreneur, and I think pretty much everyone has something that they know, that they're passionate about, that they probably know better than all of their friends, and they have a unique way based on their life experience to be able to share whatever it is that hobby or topic or passion is with the rest of the world. So I believe that everyone can monetize the knowledge that they have, and to me that is the lowest common denominator that's going to help from a social impact standpoint. I think wealth is continuing to be concentrated at the higher and higher levels, and so I really feel like this is a way to help balance some of that in a scalable way, right? Because you make a course and you don't necessarily have to, it's not like one-on-one tutoring, right? Like you can continue to scale your course business. You can get more customers without having to give up more of your time. That's the leverage that successful business people have, right? Is they don't have to consume their time in order to grow their business. So anyway, so Sincerely would be the platform where you can host those e-learnings, you can bill for them, basically a e-learning coaching business in a box.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Something that is going to benefit people globally, honestly, is what I'm hearing.
That's my hope. 1 million new entrepreneurs is the goal.
Okay, I like that. So you have a book and it's called Time Hacks. Let's hear more about that book because I have not read it. So full disclosure on that. So maybe I don't know if it's an ebook or something, but if I can grab
it's
one,
an
I'll read
ebook. I'm a huge believer in optimizing my time. It's to the point where I know I'm wasting time trying to optimize my time. Like I know I'm not getting an ROI, so it's more of just like for fun at this point. But yeah, the book is just sort of, where to just put everything down on paper of all the things I've sort of tried that worked for me, and maybe it works for other people out there. And then I try to weave in a little bit of techniques rather than just specific. So the bulk of the book is just specific tips, right? Whether it's at work or at home, different ideas on how to save time, just little shortcuts, right? Those only get you so far. Like really to make an impact, you need to decide what the goals are in your life that you want to accomplish, and you need to budget time against those things. It doesn't matter how many hacks you have. If being with your family is important to you and you don't block out any time for it, you're not going to accomplish it. It doesn't matter how efficient you are at folding the laundry or or getting work done. It's just none of that matters. So there's some technique in there, and there's also a little bit of a perspective that I would like people to have. So I don't spend a lot of time talking about it in the book, but one of the things, if we were right now to take a 1-minute break in silence on this show and the podcast right now in real time, people would be like, what's happening, right? Like it would feel like something was broken. And I think people don't realize how powerful even just 1 minute of time can be. And so and that was just my point around, we waste a lot of time. Like I know people think like, oh, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. You have a lot of time. It's just that you have a lot of other things that you want to do, and you're not necessarily prioritizing them. But we don't have to do that because people will probably shut off your podcast and think it's broken if we were silent for a minute. But maybe. I promise you, it is very difficult. And if you meditate, then you know this, but a minute is actually quite a decent amount of time.
It sure enough is. What's the name of your podcast that builds on top of the book?
Taking Your Time.
Okay. So for our listeners, you can look for Taking Your Time out there. And I guess it streams on every channel, or do you have a specific?
Yeah, podcasts, Apple, iTunes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll be able to
Spotify. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. So anything that helps to prioritize time is obviously a good thing. I agree with you. I've done that same type of an exercise where I go, okay, do a I have on my desk, it's a 5-minute hourglass, but it's not an hourglass, it's 5 minutes. And I'll turn that and I go, okay, what can I get done in 5 minutes? And it's surprising how much you can do. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes I play that game with myself a lot so I can go, okay, get this done, get this done, get this done. Just to beat the clock sometimes, but also to see how much time it does take because it's a good reminder. I'm going to look for your book. That's super helpful.
Yeah, yeah. If there's one tip, and I don't even know if I put this in the book, but really the time I should know this, but I can't remember the name of this principle. But that time sort of the time we take for a task sort of expands to fill the amount that we allocate to it, right? So I find that to be true about pretty much everything. Like I think almost any task that you can think of, it could be as mundane as washing the dishes, or even to some extent, assignments that you have at work or school, you're probably taking more time than is necessary in
Mm-hmm.
almost every single case. Is it because you want to hit a certain, like maybe there's a perfection, or maybe you don't want to rush yourself, or you don't want to feel maybe stressed out about it? Some of those are self-inflicted things. So I think if you just give yourself somewhat of a deadline, you can pretty much compress almost any task. And that's probably the best tip that I can give, is just give yourself a little deadline, and that will pretty much, you'll do anything faster.
Yeah, I like that too. And I guess I'll throw a tip on there too for people that want to spend more time with their family. I don't know if you do this or not, but I would say plan on once a week cooking a meal together so it becomes a family event.
I like that.
Yeah, that
That a
makes
lot.
it so that you're really spending time and having a different conversation. Everybody, when they're absorbed in a task, they're more likely to share things without feeling like it's forced.
For sure.
Yeah. So, what is the hardest lesson that you learned that changed your life?
Ooh. I don't know if it's the hardest lesson, but the reality is I've gotten to a point where I sort of understand, what am I doing all of this for? Like, why am I trying so hard? Why am I trying to accomplish all these things? It has to be for yourself. It can't be for anyone else,
Mhm.
because that's a treadmill. You're never gonna finish that race trying to make everyone else happy, or trying to leave a legacy. Like those things almost can't be completed. And the very interesting thing about that is there's a story. I tried researching it, so I'm not 100% sure it's true, but it's a great allegory, which is, there's an emperor of Rome. Some say it's Marcus Aurelius, and they go to this. There's a cult of the emperor, so it's this group of people that worship whoever the emperor is, as a godlike figure. And so they have this statue there that is meant for you to honor the emperor, and that he visits it one time and notices that there's a groove where the head's supposed to be. And that's because even though this group, you know, basically reveres the emperor as a god and ruler of everything, that they also know that they'll still probably die at some point. So they want to make life easy on themselves and make a statue that was easy to replace the head without having to recarve the entire statue. I don't know if this is true, but if it is, it would be incredibly clever, but also a great reminder. Like, how many Roman emperors can you name? I mean, you could do Caesar.
Right.
Like you come up with a few, but you probably can't name them all. And during their reigns, they were pretty much the top of the food chain in their lifetime, and we barely know who they are.
Yeah, and everyone
And
is replaceable. That's my takeaway.
yeah, yeah. So, well, and I don't mean in a negative sense. And so I take it away from that a positive thing. It's like, it does not matter. I could be ruler of, the United Nations. I know that's not a thing. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
it no one's going to remember it. I'm not going to leave a lasting impact on the earth in that sense. And so that means that I'm free to do things that make me happy, or that make my family happy, or that, have meaning to me. And I guess the pressure to leave an everlasting legacy is sort of off my shoulders.
That's really good. I like that approach too, because many times, gosh, social media is always just saying, you have to do this. There's that feeling, that pressure of constantly excelling and in comparison. And maybe it's not like that in other countries. Maybe it's just a US thing, but that's very freeing. I really like that. I
How
like
many
it a
people
lot.
are out there right now just like having a rough time because they don't feel like they're as successful as so and so, or they're
Oh,
behind where they want to be in life, and maybe they're making even worse decisions, like they're lying or they're stealing or they're cheating and things like that, because they want to achieve something that is just, it's ephemeral, it's not even really there.
yeah. You just have to remove that and just go, okay, it's okay. I'm just me. I am this microcosm right now, and just enjoy the time
We're
you have on
super
earth.
lucky to be alive, like in the scale of the universe, right? Like just to
Yeah.
have this experience. So
Yeah. I love that. Okay. I feel like I'm breathing a little bit better too. Thanks for sharing that story.
yeah.
So, who in your life has had the biggest impact?
Oh, I mean, my wife and I've a funny story. I've known Yvonne, since I was in fourth grade. We met in fourth grade. We did not date until high school, but she's been with me for a long time. We've been married for over a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
But we've gotten a chance to experience a lot of things with each other because of that, right? Like we were together before we were adults and knew who we were going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to take part in each other's transformation. So I know for a fact that you know a large percentage of the makeup of who I am today is a result of who Yvonne is, and how she's had an impact on my life, and vice versa, right? And it's just a great experience. And yeah, and that hands down the greatest impact on my life.
I've had a lot of interviews, and I don't think anybody has ever said that their spouse. They usually say their kids or their parents. And I find it just so honoring to your wife that she has had that type of special place in your heart for her. So she's a very fortunate woman, because apparently that's just not how other people in the world always see that. It should be, like your spouse and then your
Well,
kid.
here's the thing. I think it's by age 18 or something, statistically, you've spent 90% of all the time you ever
Yes.
will with your parents, right? That's
Yep.
the
Yep.
right,
That
based
is
on how
true.
often you go visit and things like that. There's statistically. But the fact that, so, maybe if you had asked me in my early 20s, I would have said my parents. But the reality is I've spent a lot more time with Yvonne than I have with my parents. So
Super cool. And our last question before we go to a break is, what do you want to be remembered for? I kind of feel like you answered that with the lesson of the emperor, but I'm not sure.
yeah, if I could be briefly remembered for anything, then hopefully it's, making people's lives easier. I hope to find other ways to do that. I think that there is something happening with the demographics of, the US in particular, where a lot of people are leaning away from traditional faith and, institutionalized religion. And I don't know if there are really good alternatives at the moment to replace sort of that sense of community and structure and things like that. So hopefully, that's something that I'd like to be able to devote some resources to as well in the future.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
We're going to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor, Transcend Network.
Transcend Network helps early stage startup founders find product market fit through weekly experiments, receive fundraising support, and build a global founder investor network for EdTech and the future of work technologies. The Intern Whisperer is affiliated with Employers for Change, and we thank Transcend Network for being a sponsor of our show.
And we're back to the second half of our show with Jacques Fu. We're going to be talking about what jobs and industries in 2030 might look like. What do you think 2030 is going to look like?
Oh, so interesting, because sometimes I underestimate, or sometimes I overestimate how, like, the pace of obsolescence of certain technologies, and they're still around. And then of course I underestimate how new things will change. My hope is that we're sort of, by 2030, we are kind of done with this battle of remote work versus in-person versus hybrid. I think the answer should just be, it depends on what the role is, right? And if it can be done remotely, and then most of the jobs should be remote. I think it's great to have the option to come in and have more. There is a bit more energy, right, when you can collaborate with people in face to face. But that doesn't mean that every single task and every single meeting has to be done face to face. So I think hopefully that argument and that discussion is over, and people realize it's based on the context. And then I hope that there's maybe I think everyone's going to be able to use AI without stigma in everything that they do. I mean, everything from I believe that writers that don't use AI will also be sort of falling behind. But I don't necessarily think that I don't think it's going to replace people's jobs. It shouldn't, right? If they're doing a good job, then all it should do is enhance or accelerate the work that they do. That's my opinion. I think the final product still requires a person. I mean, graphic design has been moved away from people's hands for decades now, right? You used to only be able to draw or paint things. Now right? Like we've had graphic design software for a long time now.
Right.
And they keep getting better, and they keep getting more tools to do things and templates and all that, and still requires, someone with an eye who kind of understands, what is the person trying to accomplish, who's the audience for. There's just, until I guess the general intelligence, right? AGI, they call it. So artificial general intelligence truly comes along, and we have sort of like a self-aware being, but even that is probably going to be modeled off of a person. I'm going on a huge tangent right now. My point is that I don't think anything replaces human intelligence. I think it enhances it. If your job is replaced by AI, there could be some things replaced by AI. It probably wasn't a worthwhile job anyway, in my opinion. So
yeah, just building on what you said, though, there is a place where people can use Canva, for example. You don't have to be a graphic designer. You didn't have to go to school, and Canva gives you all of these tools. I've seen people use it, and they do not have an eye for design. So no matter what it is that you give them, it's just like they still may not see it. They don't understand the principles of it. So I feel like, yes, I agree with you that, AI should be there as a tool that we can use to better things and to save us some time. I don't feel like it's any different than the transformation of going from writing on stone to paper to the printing press to then we had the internet, and now we have fast track. We have AI.
How dare you take away my job of placing the letters out onto the machine so I can stamp it down on a piece of paper? Like it's
the typewriter, remember, before the computers. There's all of these things. And so we've seen what happened with chat is it just made it's so much easier to pull together. You don't have to research as hard. You can actually pull stuff out there, but you still need to fact check it because it doesn't mean it's right. There's bad stuff out there in the internet world as easily as good stuff. So yeah, I agree with you on that one. So you addressed a couple of those questions. What do you think of low code, no code platforms, Pilot, Copilot X, all of these things that are out there for software development career paths?
I love all of it. I think things like Copilot are going to make coding much more accessible for beginners. Because I feel like, I don't have any statistics on this, but I feel like a lot of software engineers get stuck not being able to advance because they don't get to that level of proficiency where they can actually create things. They understand the syntax of the language, but they're not quite proficient enough to be able to create full applications. And I think tools like Copilot can help people get over that hump, whereas others who maybe before this tool existed may have just dropped out of that journey, right, and gone on to other branching career paths, and now they can sort of continue on. I think even with low code, no code I think that the future of software businesses is if there is a problem that has yet to be, that can have a technology solution. Now we no longer, we can make fairly robust low code, no code apps to solve these without having a engineer. Do I think that ultimately, a full, product team with the engineers and QA and all of that are going to be able to create something better? Sure. But if no one's creating it and you don't have the resources to hire them, then having these platforms that you can build these apps without having any knowledge of programming is going to allow you to potentially get to that first step, and then raise some capital, get some revenue, things like that. So I'm a firm believer that there was a barrier in the past where it absolutely required an engineer to make an app, and now I think we're going to get past that. And yeah, maybe to make something more complicated or more sophisticated or more customized, that would still be true, but that would also take a lot more resources. So now you can start making revenue earlier. You can start prototyping an idea sooner, validating an idea sooner. You could just basically get a lot farther than you could in the past.
I agree with that. Let's see, I'm looking through here. So what piece of advice would you like to leave as mentoring advice that you would pass on? And our audience is pretty wide. We're about like 22, 23 to about 65 plus, all different industries, a little bit more heavy on the male side than on the female side. What would you say to somebody just about life in general? You've shared some really good, definitely tidbits and stuff, wisdom, but I want to know what is the biggest takeaway that you would want to share?
I think I accelerated my growth as a person by realizing that I didn't have to have a mentor that looked and acted a specific way. So this is a little bit meta of a question, or a meta way of answering, because this is like, if I'm mentoring someone, what would I say? But I would say that you need more than just one mentor.
Right.
And I think you should be open to people have become my mentors over the years on certain things. And I never realized that they were just people that I met in the community. We would have conversations about things that they knew about that I didn't know about. And after a while, maybe they're my mentor in this kind of subject, or maybe they're my mentor as a parent because their kids were a little older than mine. So they're, further along that journey. So there's all kinds of mentors. They have all come from all different backgrounds. And I don't think, I think many people get stuck in the idea of, let me find that one person who has the life that I think I want, and I'll just, I'll learn everything from them. But that's, I think the better way is to just get a lot of mentors. So
I agree with that one also. I'm going to go back because I missed a question, and I always like to hear people's answers to this. So what ethical dilemmas do you foresee going into 2030?
Well,
anything, pick anything. AI.
Yeah. That's a great, well, I think I have to point to generative AI because there's so many implications that we don't have right now, but it's going to be so easy to fabricate. This just happened, actually. I think a presidential campaign made a photo of another candidate that never happened. This is the first in history where, a formal campaign essentially made a Photoshop, but they used generative AI to do it. So it's a lot more convincing, right, than others. And some people might think that's real, and they can say it's just an illustration. It's just a creative thing, all they want. But some people are still going to believe it. right? It's just kind of human nature. So there's just a lot of implications around the outputs of generative AI, how convincing they are. You talked about, having to fact check, right?
Right.
There was another court case where it cited cases that never happened. That was like what was submitted into the arguments. It was like, oh, well, based on this precedent, well, that precedent doesn't exist. So,
Yeah.
that there's all these things happening right now. So there's hallucinations. There's using it for, if you will, propaganda, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also ethical considerations around the source data that is being used to train, like the people who are doing this lower level research and publishing these articles that these models are being trained off of. They're not getting any credit for their work, and they're creating these massive industries in the future, and they're not they're not getting a piece of it. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting. Right?
I saw something on Twitter, and it was this plane, and it was done with 3D, and it was a giant, plane that would carry people, like one of the big ones, whatever that is. I don't think it's a 747, but it was big, and it was coming down, and it looked like it was trying to land, and then it got hit, and it was rolling, and falling apart. And I looked at it and I went, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, this is real. It looked real. Then, when I was reading the comments, and people may not read comments, oh, this is done with AI. This is not real. Don't think this is real.
Wow.
I know. And it's just like what you were saying about that political campaign. It's the same thing. People can put stuff out there and we're going to think, this is real. Millions of people killed in India. Well, could that start? This is maybe an outcome. Wherever in the world, could we have started a war because now what's being put out there, we were thinking it's real, and nobody's checking it, and then somebody just goes, oh, let's push a button. It looks real.
Yeah. I mean, how easy would it be for Putin and his regime to create images of Ukrainian soldiers torturing people? Or something like that. I probably shouldn't even say that. I'm giving someone an idea, right? Like this is, uncharted territory for us as a society. And how do we police this stuff? I don't know. I think there's, you can't, you have some liability if you shout fire in a theater, right? And someone gets hurt, right? If we were to apply that to the internet, that would be unprecedented and obviously also flying in the face of a lot of what we've built an open internet on, right? The ability to, have all types of content and not be suppressed, right?
Yeah, black web.
Yeah, but then you get the dark web, and yeah. So I think those things are happening, and those I don't know if that there's very many straightforward solutions. So
yeah, really have to think about that. Well, I want to say it's been a pleasure having you as a guest. I love this conversation. It's been in a direction that I haven't had before with some other guests. And so I appreciate the spontaneity of the conversation for sure. And the fact that, we're having it as hopefully a lesson for people to, really think about, can we do this? Should we do this as part of that last close?
I hope so.
Yeah. Being wise is everything. Well, Jacques, thank you so much. I will talk with you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay. We want to thank our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, and thank you to our production team, Leona Blair, video editing intern, and also music by Sophie Lloyd. Be sure to visit Employers for Change at www.e4c.tech to learn how you can create real diversity and inclusion culture while skilling your people for the future. Thank you for supporting the Intern Whisperer by subscribing to us on Podbean, our Employers for Change YouTube channel, or stream from your favorite podcast channel. And our show is brought to you by Employers for Change. Thank you.